Okay, welcome Cloud Gurus, and in this lecture we're going to create an Amazon machine image and share it with the world. So first thing we're going to do is go into EC2, and I have been playing around with the console a little bit and just deleting the previous volume that we had, so it might look a little different to what you see. But if we just go into our running instance and have a look at it, and you can see over here we've got the web server 1, which we've been working on previously. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a snapshot of the system partition, so the actual root volume itself. Now I could either do it here, or I could click on volumes and create a snapshot from the volume. Might just do it that way, and just click here and go create snapshot. And here I'm just going to call it my default web server. This is the default web server. Okay, so I'm just going to create this snapshot. We can see that the creation has started. If I go in here, it was fast, so you can see it's already been completed. What I'm going to do now that we've got this snapshot, is I'm going to turn it into an image, so an Amazon machine image. So it's really simple, just click Actions and go Create Image. And here I'm going to call it my default web server AMI. I'm just going to add AMI at the end so that I know the difference between my image and my snapshot. And I'm going to call this my default web server. Now, there's a few things you can do here. You can change the architecture so that's so it's 32-bit only. We can change the virtualization type. We can change the root device name. We can change it to be different kernel IDs and different RAM disk IDs. But none of this would come up in the exam. So let's just keep it simple, and just create and leave out all the other options as default and hit create. Okay, so it's got an image, it says create image request received. So it's going to take a little bit of time to create my image. It's probably normally about 5 minutes. That being said, it's done it all very fast. So we can now see my Amazon machine image. And so basically this is a complete copy of my EC2 instance. And what I can do now is I can go in and I can change the image permissions. So right now by default it's private, and you can see here in this little drop down box it says owned by me. If I went to public images, I can see a whole bunch. There's literally, in this region, 22,435 public images. So I can go back to owned by me, and I'm going to make this image public. So we go down and we just go to modify image permissions. Now, when you've got a private image, you can actually share it with AWS accounts. You just basically enter in the person's AWS account number and you hit add permission, and that will allow them to, that way you can share images between accounts without making them public. Now if I click on public, you'll see that that all disappears and it just makes the AMI public. And there we go, it's pretty straightforward. The reason we're going through this is a couple of things. There are security implications that you've got to take into account, and I'll explore those in a little bit more detail. But when we go on to do the assignment, what we're going to do is we're going to build up a template AMI, and then we use that AMI for auto-scaling events. So we're going to build basically our gold standard web server, and then when we auto-scale based on CPU threshold or whatever, we're going to use that gold standard to provision our new EC2 instances. So let's just think about the security considerations here. When you publish a EC2 instance and make it public to the entire world, that means that anyone can go in and access it. So there are a few requirements or things that you should consider, and this can come up in the exam, and I'll leave these links in the resources section. But basically there's a few things you want to consider here for all AMIs. So if you just read through here, it says disable service and protocols that authenticate users in clear text, so things like Telnet, FTP. do not start unnecessary network services on launch, securely delete all AWS credentials from disk. So that's very important, especially if you're storing public and private key pairs. You know, maybe you're not using the roles section in Identity Access Management and you're using keys, private keys, or maybe when you SSH in, you've left your public key there. So you want to delete your public key from the AWS, you know, from the EC2 instance, because otherwise people will get, you know, would be able to access your public key. Securely delete any third-party credentials from disk and configuration systems. Securely delete any additional certificates or key material from the systems. Ensure that software installed on your AMI does not have the default internal accounts passwords. So that might be things like admin password, etc., as your default username and password. And ensure that the system does not violate AWS acceptable use policy. And there is actually, if we click on this tab, this is a guideline for shared Linux AMIs, and this is more of a DevOps component than a solutions architecture component, so I'm not going to waste your time by running through how we do this in a lecture, but there's a few few commands you can run here. This is probably the most useful of them all. So this basically shreds all our SSH host key pairs, so it stops you from sharing your public key. And the other thing you want to do is delete your bash history. So in fact, we'll just go in and do that as a practical example. I'll just clear my screen here. So to delete our bash history, so to delete our bash history, all we need to do is run the command history -C for clear. And now if I hit the up button, I can't see what any of my bash history is. So it's really straightforward and simple. So the things that will come up in the exam about AMIs is just it's important to remember exactly that. Delete your bash history, and then also delete off any public keys or any kind of key value pairs that you're storing on your AMI when making it public. Those are the two sort of key points to remember. We will be using Amazon Machine Images for the assignment, but we'll go through that separately when we come to that section. So if you have any questions, please let me know in this section off to the right, but if not, let's move on to the next lecture. Thank you.